her take it away.
Yeah, well, thank you guys for joining us this evening. I kind of wanted to start off just by first getting everyone to think of what comes to mind when I say Alaska. And I know for a lot of you, if you immediately think of winter, cold, snow, maybe Moose or our former governor, you're not alone. I don't know what your first impression was when you came, Amanda, but was it, kind of having some of these ideas in mind?
It was a little bit, but my first time I went with the family was on an Alaskan cruise. We did a round trip cruise out of Seattle, and it just gave us enough of a taste of Alaska. But when I was invited by Anchorage Tourism Department to come up in February, I was quite concerned because February in Alaska does not sound like balmy. And it ended up that actually school was closed back here in Kansas because the temperatures were so cold here, but it was like 30, low 20s in Alaska at that time. So it wasn't any different than temps in Kansas were.
Awesome. So what I think of are photos like these. So these are, you can see year-round pictures. So the winter ones, me and my family cross-country skiing to Portage Glacier, and then me and Mary McCormick going snow machining up in Fairbanks. And experiences like these are what has made Alaska special for me. And I know a lot of people have different things in mind when answering this question, what makes Alaska so special? First, I think what comes to mind for a lot of folks is our pristine landscapes here. So we have these wide open, untamed spaces, lots of wilderness. We have over 54 million acres of national park and over 3 million acres of state park, which makes that the largest state park system in the US. For all of the mountains we have here, we also have 17 of the top 20 highest peaks in the US. And of course, many, many glaciers. And I forget, on your trip, Amanda, were you guys able to check out Chugach State Park?
No, we didn't do that, but we went to the Mananuska Glacier.
Okay.
And so I saw glaciers in the summer on, the cruise, and we went to the glacier in Juneau area. I can't think of the name of it right now. And saw the glaciers there, but by going in winter, I was actually able to go up and touch the glacier and walk up to it, where in the summer you're going to have that body of water between you and the glacier, unless you do one of the, like a flight seeing tour or something that's going to take you up to the cap to do the dog sled racing, which is popular in summer.
Gotcha. Um, Chugach State Park is the closest that we have to Anchorage here. That's where we go for our city tours. There's lots of really great hiking trails that are really easily accessible from right there. So that is one of the more common spots. It's also, I think, for one of their trailheads, the Flat Top Trailhead, I want to say it takes in a significant percentage of the revenue for the park system as a whole, which is really kind of impressive. It gets quite a few visitors. The next thing I think a lot of people think of is our abundant wildlife. We just went over how we have all of this natural space, and that's perfect habitat for so many critters. So apart from the big four land animals, moose, caribou, bear, Dall sheep, we also have plenty of marine animals that folks come to see, whales, sea otters. did you get an opportunity for some wildlife viewing on your trips, Amanda?
Yeah, so, when we went down to the Alaska Wildlife Center, um, we got to feed a moose there as one of the rehab. That center just has animals that can no longer be in the wild. Like they were either found in an area and they can't be relocated because of issues with their health or whatever. And so we did get to feed a moose there, and that was super fun.
Oh, awesome. And then lastly, what I really think is a big portion of what makes Alaska so special is we have this small town feel statewide. So here in Anchorage, we do have the largest population here in the state, but we still have this tight sense of community like a small town. So you'll hear stories of neighbors supporting neighbors, and you'll get this pay it forward mentality. And in your journeys, have you kind of found that to be
Yeah, I
true,
felt like it
Amanda?
was
Like, have you gotten that sense that there's a
right.
lot
I
of
didn't get
community
that so
here?
much when we were just, doing little day trips, but certainly spending more time in Anchorage, and just getting to meet more of the locals. I felt like it was very much a Midwest attitude. I was in the elevator at one of the hotels and was chatting to a guy asking if he was in for the Iditarod, and yes, he was. And I asked where he was from, and he was from somewhere else in Alaska, and I didn't know where that town was. And I said I was from Kansas, and we chatted. And later on, I realized he was one of the top 10 racers in the Iditarod. So just very down to earth and friendly people.
Oh, awesome. Awesome. I'm glad that comes across because like I definitely feel it living here, and I hope our visitors take that away as well. And then kind of moving away from Alaska in general, now to more specifically what Salmon Berry Tours offers. And we are a small group tour company based out of Anchorage. We have a small fleet of Freightliner Sprinter vans. They are either 15 or 16 passenger vehicles. We cap at 13 for comfort. So we go by nice small group. It's not like a big motor coach full of people. Apart from these tours, we can also create custom multi-day itineraries to help you find your Alaska, fulfill that Alaska wish list. And we can do custom pre-cruise land tours if you have rescheduled your cruise and you're looking for something a little more unique for pre or post. We also are year round, so we can do that in winter as well. In the winter, we do have fully escorted winter packages, which can still be customized. So we do have specific trips for aurora viewing, our Northern Lights getaways. We also do have an Iditarod package. So if you are looking to come up for the race, we definitely always have a group that we not only, take in all the festivities of the race, but we also encapsulate kind of the best of Alaska winter along with that.
And if I recall, Anna, from the Iditarod time, I feel like Salmon Berry Tours offices are really close to the race headquarters. So didn't you have people just kind of warming up and getting snacks and stuff in the office and then going back out to kind of watch the ceremonial start?
Oh, yeah. So the main action for that day is all along 4th Avenue, and we're kind of right in the midst of it. So we have hot cocoa, coffee, all set and ready. We can definitely host you that day if you just need a spot to warm up. Um, that day is also the running of the reindeer. And Amanda, I don't know if you want to go into some more
Yeah, so
detail
if you
on
guys
your
ever look on my
experience
Facebook
doing the
page,
running
you
of the
can see
reindeer.
pictures of me. Apparently, you're supposed to have a costume to run with the reindeer, and feature your state. And I, as the typical overwhelmed travel agent, was not focused on my own travels. The cobbler has no shoes. And so I didn't have a costume, and I tried to find sunflowers, like, Michael's or Hobby Lobby, and couldn't find them anywhere. And I just kind of said something to the ladies from the tourism department, and they used tablecloths and created me a Dorothy costume. So I literally had a yellow tablecloth that they converted into the yellow brick road, and I ran down the street carrying a basket with Alaskan Husky stuffed puppy in it. It was a super fun experience.
Yeah, so there are all kinds of fun, unique activities like that during For Rendezvous, which is the winter festival we have right before Iditarod. There's also porta potty races where you have to construct like a porta potty that someone has to sit on, and then you race down the street as well. So there are all these kind of fun, unique activities you can do right before Iditarod.
Mhm.
And um, with that in mind, I thought we'd go next into some frequently asked questions we get. And the first one, when is the best time to visit Alaska? So we do have a lot of folks who come for the summer season. That is our peak travel time here, while everyone is wanting to soak in all that extra daylight we have and take advantage of some of the activities available. The most popular, Denali National Park bus tours, day cruises, the smaller day cruises, whether it be for whale watching or glacier viewing. If you are looking for a fishing charter, the deep sea fishing charters are also really, really popular. And then fly out bear viewing if you're looking to go to some of the more remote national parks like Katmai or Lake Clark for some specific bear viewing. A flyout trip is a great option. And as we've discussed, we say Alaska is always in season, so we operate year round. There are still plenty of activities to do, and often it's less expensive airfare and accommodations to come in the winter. So there is dog sledding, aurora viewing, snow machining, as we call it here, or snowmobiling, as you may know it. And we kind of touched on this earlier, but Amanda, what was the most surprising thing coming in the winter?
Well, I mean, I just think it was that there was still a lot of wildlife. And for me, people also ask me what's the best time to go to Alaska. And, to me, I'd have to say it'd be like comparing my kids. Do I like Lydia more or do I like Elliot more? And, some days I like Lydia a little bit more and some days I like Elliot a little bit more, but I love them both all the time. And so that's how I feel about Alaska. It's really hard to say that one season is truly better than another because there are such different things about each season to experience.
Perfect. And then that kind of goes into the next question. Can you see wildlife year round? And there is a way. So there definitely are places where you can still see wildlife year round. The Alaska Wildlife Conservation Center is a great option. And so is the muskox farm. If you're looking for muskox specifically, they actually have the largest herd of domesticated muskox. That's that bottom photo. And so there is a way. They do still have the bears at the Wildlife Conservation Center. They are a little less active in the winter, but they don't go into a full hibernation. So they are still on a feeding schedule. So as you can see in the picture, they're still there, maybe not as active though.
It was
Um,
interesting because when we were at the muskox farm, they talked about how the muskox are very good at conserving in the winter months. So, for example, in the summer months, when they go to the restroom it would be maybe a more of a cow-sized experience. But in the winter months, they are so good at digesting their food that their waist is very much similar in size to rabbit pellets. So very interesting animals that are available year round.
Yeah, and as far as animals we see out on tour, moose are, I would say, the most common year round, even in the winter. It's quite common in the winter. We'll see them as we're driving along the highway, just because it's kind of a nice path for them, right along there in the tree line. So you can still see them, out in the wild too. But the conservation center and the muskox farm are great options for that guaranteed viewing.
Mm-hmm.
And then I always like asking folks this question: what's your favorite place in Alaska? Because we get a lot of people who want to know, okay, where should I plan on going? These are all the places I've read about in my research, but like, what are those special spots you think I can't miss? And so, Amanda, what has your favorite place in Alaska been?
It's really hard to say. There are a lot of amazing, beautiful places. I would say I really enjoyed Anchorage because it was so, it was a small, quaint town, and it was easy. It was like an hour and a half or hour drive out to see the glaciers or to go see the muskox or go to Prince William Sound, or, there was so much within that area. It was very easy for day trips. Yeah. But what's your favorite, Anna?
Yeah, so I have a couple. Cooper Landing has a really special spot in my heart. That's about 2.5 hours south of Anchorage in the Kenai Peninsula. We did many, many camping trips there growing up. It also has some really amazing fishing on the Kenai and Russian River. And it's just gorgeous country. You have that beautiful, like almost aquamarine water from the glacier runoff.
Mm-hmm.
So it's this just really, really pristine color. And then Homer is also one of my favorites. It's a little further south on the peninsula, a little bit longer of a drive, about 4.5 to 5 hours. And it's this really awesome coastal port town with amazing art. They have all kinds of wonderful local artists and artisans. The Homer Spit has some really, really cute shops, some amazing gelato, Carmen's Gelato. So lots of good food and stuff to check out. You can go for a walk on the beach. And although it is farther, every time I go, I just fall in love a little more, find a new favorite food place.
Mm-hmm. Awesome.
And so now, do you want to open it up to questions?
Yeah, that would be great. So let me see how I get everyone back. So if you guys want to ask what your questions are, I know Debbie and Beth and Deb, you're on there. So what are some of your questions about Alaska?
Is it okay that I unmute?
Yes, please.
Okay. Hi, Amanda. Hi, Anna.
Fine, how are you?
Hello. I have some questions. My husband and I have occasionally talked about going to Alaska. He's not a flyer, so it suddenly always turns into this like month-long journey where we drive to Seattle and take a boat or something like that. Mm-hmm. But if we were to fly, I think we'd want to go in the summertime. And he has what I would call an unreasonable fear of bears. What is the situation with the bears there? Are you going to run into them everywhere, or is there bear avoidance?
You really won't in the Anchorage area, depending on where you go. Of course, like if you're going on, like I mentioned, one of those specific bear viewing trips, that's the goal, right?
Right,
But
right.
as far as just, you know, in the Anchorage area, or even like Talkeetna, Denali, Seward, I really don't think it's a big major concern. Of course, still be prepared if you are planning on going on hike. But
I mean, are they just walking down the street?
depending on where you go, a lot of those trails are very well populated, and
Okay.
so that'll kind of help keep them at bay, or let them know folks are there. They really don't want to mess with people.
Right.
So
And if you do one of these bear viewing tours, then everything is in a controlled environment, right?
right. So for instance, one of the most popular trips is the Brooks Falls trip in Katmai.
Mm-hmm.
And how Katmai is set up, it is a trip that's a fly out. So you fly to Brooks Camp, you do a whole like bear aware introduction, like they show a little video and you get your pin, and then it's a boardwalk with different viewing platforms that you walk along, plenty of park rangers there to assist. And so they're also there, you know, keeping folks in the know, but it is definitely a more controlled environment.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
I have had some guests before that were traveling with Salmon Berry, and they were there more in the September timeframe. From Denali, they flew into Fairbanks, and then Denali, and then headed down to the Anchorage area. And they did have some bear sightings in Denali. They're a little bit more active in the fall, and you'll be more likely to see the young. But they certainly didn't feel like they were in any danger. It was very exciting for them to see some bear from a distance.
Okay.
So help.
Anchorage, I think. I wouldn't ask.
I have a question. Just if you were going to name the top 3 places to go on land in Alaska, what would those be? I know we have a friend who was on a cruise and had some stops, but there was a place where there were some breweries and just kind of small, very small place. So I'll let you answer.
Yeah, so we always recommend when folks come that they consider going both north and south of Anchorage. Anchorage is a pretty typical spot to arrive and depart from.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you are, you know, arriving, departing Anchorage, going north to Talkeetna or Denali, or going south to like Girdwood or Seward are really, really great. Girdwood is a ski community in the winter, but there is the Alyeska resort right there. They do have a really awesome brewery, and as does most places in Alaska, there's definitely a lot of craft beer here.
All right.
But I would just, you know, keep in mind, you'll see quite a different scenery if you go both north and south.
Okay, thank you.
And I would kind of lean, most of my guests tend to like to fly into Fairbanks. They get into Fairbanks, we sometimes can get them in early in the day, but coming from the Midwest, they're usually going to get into Fairbanks about dinner time, stay in Fairbanks for a night, and then take the train to Denali. We've got all kinds of different accommodation options and tour options there. And then from Denali, we'll have them take the train back to Anchorage. And depending upon what they want to do, sometimes I send them to the Talkeetna area, but most of the time they'll head down to the Seward area to do, because that's closer to the fjords. And so it's easier to get out onto the water and have that experience. And then from Seward back to Anchorage is about an hour and a half. 2 hours. So it's pretty easy to have a later flight. Most of the flights that like Delta has are out in the evening. So when I flew back in the winter, I flew back from Anchorage. I think I had a 9 p.m. flight. So I left the Alyeska resort about 6:30 or so. airport is much smaller than Kansas City, so it's up until this point, it's been pretty easy to get in and get through security and all of that to get on your plane. Do the red eye, land in Minneapolis about 6 a.m. and you'll be back to Kansas about 8:30 or 9 in the morning.
Great.
And I guess an important question is if it's summer or winter. For sure, if it's winter and you're looking for aurora viewing, I would definitely recommend Fairbanks. That's where you have the best chances of catching the northern lights. And so Fairbanks is definitely a great spot, especially in winter.
Okay.
When traveling with my family and the kids, their favorite things about Alaska were they loved being in Juneau and just sitting at the Bay Area, and I think it's where the original Alaska Airlines started, and just watching the flight planes take off. And there was a cute little brewery down there that we ate some amazing French fries and the husband and I had a beer. That was super fun. In terms of activities for multi-generation, the highlight for my kids was the the sled dog viewing in Skagway. So they got to go meet an area where they have sled dogs. They got to hold the puppies. Some of them were 5 or 6 weeks old, and see how the puppy training. And then we got to go on a modified sled ride in the summer. So that was a lot of fun for the kids. I thought it was pretty cool because from that area, you're also pretty close to the Canadian border. And so there was a place where we could go stand up and look out, and supposedly somewhere in the trees over there was Canada.
Okay.
Is it less expensive in the winter, and how much so? How much so? 10%, 30%?
As far as winter versus summer going there, it's probably less expensive in the winter, but do you have is it 10% less or any kind of?
I think it really depends upon what week in winter you go, because if you're going to go around Iditarod or around the holidays, it's going to be very comparable to summer prices because it's peak season, but certainly is probably 10 to 15% less to go in the winter. Fairbanks area is probably a little bit more in the winter because of the aurora. If you're looking to kind of take advantage of best price and best chance to look at things, I've had a lot of luck having people be in the Fairbanks area in September and then head down to Anchorage, because right about September 15th or so is when they close Denali, because they'll get ready to start to snow. And so that's when they have the beautiful fall leaves. You see some bears. I've had people, cannot guarantee it, but I've had people be able to see aurora in September and then head down to Anchorage and into where it's a little bit more temperate. And either do Anchorage, Whittier area, or some people will go on a southbound cruise to Vancouver at that time.
All right. Hey, thank you. We're going to need to leave this session, and just want to thank you both very much. This has been super informative and helpful.
Well, thanks, Debbie. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Does anybody else have any other questions?
I have another question.
Yeah.
Can one of you tell me what the cuisine of Alaska is like? Does it vary? Is it all fish?
Well, I will speak from a Kansan with a family with a very limited range. And there were some amazing restaurants in Anchorage. We got to go to Pangea, which is going to have Asian, a little bit of Italian, though not super authentic. Has all kinds of great flavors. It was amazing food, and probably about $35 to $40 a person for what would be a high-end restaurant that would, cost over $100 a person in Kansas City area.
Okay.
They have Snow City Cafe is really good with salmon eggs Benedict, some really fun foods. And then of course they have a lot of pizzas and things like that, more brewery pub food. So I'll speak for that's what my family enjoyed and what I enjoyed in Alaska. I'm not a super huge fish person, but I'll let Anna speak on the whole area and the range.
Yeah, I would say that's actually pretty spot on. Seafood in general is pretty big just because we have access to some really, really incredible fresh local seafood. You know, anything from fish like salmon and halibut to scallops, clams, stuff like that. Pub fare and craft beer is also definitely big. So we do have, like I mentioned, quite a few craft breweries and pubs. So definitely got a lot of that as well. In downtown, there are a lot of really great options within walking distance of the downtown hotels. Amanda mentioned Sin City. There's also Glacier Brew House. Has a little something for everybody. Surprisingly, up in Fairbanks is some of the best Thai food I've ever had. So if you do head to Fairbanks, they have incredible Thai restaurants, which is kind of funny and not what you would expect, but very, very delicious.
Awesome. Thank you.
Deb, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I was going to ask, what would be a good time to stay? Because you see a lot of trips and tours for like a 3-day, 4-day, 5-day, 7-day. What would be a good time to stay to see what you might want to see? Say you want to see 2, 3, 4 places.
I'd say 7 to 10 days. So typically, you know, when you fly, if you're going to fly in and go from the interior to the exterior, more, you know, into Fairbanks and out of Anchorage area, then usually you're going to have that first night in Fairbanks before you get into Denali. And I think at least 2 to 3 nights in Denali. If you just want to go and just do a quick walk in Denali or a park tour, 2 nights would be adequate. But most guests want to have, and I think they should have time to just sit and be like, holy cow, I'm in Denali, and, you know, look at that beautiful mountain, or, you know, enjoy the atmosphere and the sense of relaxation that you have there. To get from Denali down to Anchorage, that train usually leaves, I think, about 10, 11-ish and gets into Anchorage about 8. So usually on that train trip, I do like to have people have what's called the gold car. And so they have some meals and they have more of that domed car experience to watch nature go by. And then in Seward, depending upon where you go in the train, you might do a night at Anchorage and then head down to Seward for a couple nights and then back to Anchorage. So it's a little bit of a crisscross, just depending on transportation. You can rent a car. They are very pricey to rent and can be a little bit inconvenient as well to drive. There are certain oddities about Alaska. I know there's an area when we were headed to Prince William Sound that there was certain times you could go in one direction or another on the tunnel. So if you missed that cutoff, then you had to wait quite a bit of time before you could go, because the tunnel is shared between northbound and southbound traffic and trains. So, you know, you have a schedule there as well. Anna, what are your thoughts?
I would say 7 to 10 days is definitely the most common when we're compiling everyone's wish list. That's generally enough time to accomplish everything that you want to do and make it not feel as like go, 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 go all the time. You know, that has a little bit of free time and downtime that we can play with. I think a lot of folks don't realize until they're here how big Alaska is and how far everything is apart. And if you are taking the train, like Amanda mentioned, the train from Anchorage to Denali is a pretty full day just for the train ride itself. So definitely I would focus on, you know, that 7 to 10 day time frame.
And there are some, you know, there are some offbeat in the path things that you can do in Anchorage. You know, granted, we've talked a lot about the highlights about, Denali and, seeing the glaciers, going on hikes, all that stuff. But there are some really unique things that you can do. I know I've had people who are photographers as a hobby and they really want to see the wildlife. Well, I really encourage them to splurge a little bit and hire a local photographer to go with them, because that local photographer knows where the eagle are and where the best flowers are, and can really help get them to that destination to get the best pictures that they want to have. Likewise, Salmon Berry has some tours that are, if someone's really into arts and Native heritage, they may be able to learn how to make and dye a silk fabric scarf and do a aurora painting on this scarf that then becomes their own keepsake. And they've learned some craft time and a little bit about heritage. When I was there in the winter, we went up and did this thing called fat tire biking. I don't know if you guys have ever done it. I thought it was seriously one of the most hilarious experiences of my life, because you're on this bike with a tire that's like 3 inches, and you're riding on snow. And when I was a kid, they had those balls with the handles and you bounce up and down, and it felt like I was kind of biking on one of those balls. And you're through these amazing paths and wilderness, and you're on this equipment and just having a new adventure and making some really fun memories. So they're like things that are a little bit different than the typical Alaska, must check this off list.
Definitely. And to echo on to that, that's why our question when we, are first talking to folks is, what's on your wish list? And then we can have the recommendations from there and really find what is the best fit and what we feel like will give you the best experience depending on what you're looking for.
Right. Because unlike, maybe it was you, Deb, that said your husband is afraid of bears, or it might have been Debbie, I don't remember. But at the Alaska Wildlife Conservation Center, they did roll out a program where you could feed the bears this last year. So somebody who doesn't have that anxiety and wants a thrill might really love to feed the bear, and it's a new experience that is not typical what everybody else is getting. Does that make sense?
They also have a moose encounter too. So if you don't want to do the bears, you can do the moose.
Or you can hold Kit Kat. Kit Kat's the porcupine.
Yeah.
There. So, and also, some people really want to go fishing. They want to catch their salmon. There are certainly ways that can be accommodated as well. And there are more remote villages. If somebody really wants to get remote, we have ability to do that. Salmon Berry's got great connections that puts you really truly off the beaten path. So you are more remote and having a grand adventure that is what fits your heart and your desires. Anna, do you have any last thoughts?
I don't. Are there any other last questions?
Well, I'm going to thank you all so much for taking the time out of your evenings. I know we're busy in this stay-at-home time and busy dreaming, and I appreciate you taking the time to join us this evening and hear a little bit about Alaska and start your wheels turning and how you can have the adventure that's best for you to explore an amazing state. So I appreciate your time, and thank you all so very much.
Thank you for having me, Amanda. This was so fun.
Thanks. Have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you.